The following program is an MLWRadio.com production. Matt! Media Productions.
You remembered them fondly, and then they were gone. And now you want to know who, what, where, when, why. Why it ended with Robbie E. and Matt Koon.
What's up, guys? It's hashtag Why It Ended Wednesday. You know what that means. So we're here on Why It Ended. And Matt, listen, we are continuing week after week to change lives. Look how James Ellsworth's life has changed since being on our show.
It is amazing what happens, Robbie, in the span of just 1 week. Let's count here. James Ellsworth was on Why It Ended on Wednesday. And where was he on Sunday night?
I believe he was live on WWE pay-per-view because that's how we roll over here on this podcast.
We change lives up in here, and congratulations to James Ellsworth. We hope everybody enjoyed the interview. I thought it was fantastic, and I'm looking forward to doing a little bit more this week with our good friend Ryback.
Yeah, this is going to be super cool. I just wrestled him last week, and he's a very intense dude. And he has some very intense things to say. So this one's going to be a good one.
Now, we'd like to thank everybody who has joined the Why It Ended Patreon. Like I was telling you, we're going to get everything up there. What we're getting up there are all the full interviews, unedited interviews that we have. And also, those who've been on Patreon have gotten this interview for about 4 days now. And they're also going to get our upcoming interview with Vince Russo a few days early. Yeah,
if you're ever going to join now, because you're going to want to get this Russo interview a few days early because, it's Vince Russo. So, you don't want to wait a week for it. I know him very well, and he came on this agreeing that he was just going to tell all, and that's exactly what he did.
So make sure to join us on Twitter. Interact with us. We love interacting with you. We try to respond to everything. Sometimes you get responded by me, Robbie, and the Why It Ended account at Why It Ended. And of course, you can find us on Instagram at Why It Ended. You can get t-shirts from us at prowrestlingtees.com/Why It Ended. And of course, check out our YouTube channel, whereended.com. So today, as you said, we have Ryback coming up. Is there anything in particular you're looking forward to hearing, especially after getting beat up by him the other day?
Well, he was in WWE, got released, and they got rehired in developmental, which I think is an interesting story. So I would like to hear how that all went down. And then, the name of our show, just Why It Ended. I know his exit from WWE was kind of a crazy one, and I'm looking forward to hearing the story out of his mouth.
Well, definitely, and you're going to hear it all and some coming up. Ryback on Why It Ended right after this. Every single week, the downloads for Why It Ended go up, and we only have one person to thank, and that's you. Thank you for listening. Now we can do something for you. If you want to advertise on our show, Why It Ended, and be heard by tens of thousands of wrestling fans every week, just email us at whyitendedmail@gmail.com and get your product or service heard by tens of thousands of wrestling fans, mostly men between the age of 25 and 44, which is a great demographic for your product. So go ahead and give us an email, whyitendedmail@gmail.com, and get heard today. All right, joining us now is our huge guest, figuratively and literally. We have the big guy, Ryback. Ryback, how's it going, man?
I am doing well. Thank you for the great introduction, and just enjoying this fine Monday in Las Vegas. It's 100 and something degrees out here, so trying to stay cool.
Hey, well, don't get too happy because he does that introduction to everyone. Basically, whenever our guest first comes on, he kisses their butt and tries to say all this stuff to make you like him better than me. So just don't believe Matt Koon.
I'm sure if this goes on, my hate will grow for him.
Oh, I'm sure.
As the questions start coming in.
I know you got a match with Robbie coming up, Ryback. I just want to know, hypothetically, how far do you think you could throw him?
Hey.
I just found out about this today myself. So I was actually, it's on the independent. I like to know who I'm working before I go there. Because one, I like to watch tape, and that way I can get my brain going. And a lot of times it's guys you've never worked before. So, for example, I've never worked Robbie, but I've seen him enough. So I was actually relieved to see that. I was telling you earlier, sometimes you show up and they, oh, yeah, we need you wrestling this 350-pound guy. And I'm like, guys, I'm trying to get better right now in this period. Like my health was not good. I can't be picking these guys up, getting dropped. But I'm excited. I think it's going to be good, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, awesome, man. So let me ask you this. How did you originally, going back the start from it all, how did you originally fall in love with pro wrestling?
As a kid, my first memory was 5, 6 years old. Parents took me and my sister to a WWF event, a live event in Las Vegas, and I don't remember anything except for the yellow tights on Hogan and the black singlet on Andre. And I remember just screaming and having the time of my life. My family didn't have wrestling on in the house, really. I think it was just one of those, they took us as kids to this event to just do a family thing. And I never really followed up with that, even though I really enjoyed myself. It wasn't until about 8, 9 years old, closer to probably 9. And my buddies, Justin and Jimmy Belanger, that lived down the road from me, they were really, really big wrestling WWF fans. And we always had sleepovers, and it was always me against everybody else out in like fighting the neighborhood, like trampolines. And they were like, you'd really got to start watching this. You're going to like it. And then I remember they showed me Undertaker and Bret Hart were on one night, and I was spending the night, and I just, from right there, I was hooked. It just became, I don't want to say obsessed with it, but just I couldn't get enough of it. Anytime it was on, it put me in a good mood. And luckily enough, coming from an athletic background, I was able to pick it up fairly easily when I got into it.
So you, because you live in Vegas now, and you said when you were young you were in Vegas. So did you live in Vegas pretty much your whole life?
Yeah, I was born and raised out here, so I love it. It's grown tremendously from the time when I was a kid till now, and getting all the sports teams here and whatnot. We're expanding at a pretty fast rate, which is good, but it's also bad because there's a lot more people here now.
Well, a lot of us first became aware of you in 2005 when you were on Tough Enough. Was that your first entree into the world of professional wrestling, or had you been training or tried to be a wrestler before you sent that tape in to Tough Enough?
No, that was my first deal. I'd actually sent in a tape on an earlier Tough Enough when I was even younger, and nothing came about of it. I was at school. I was at UNLV. I'd always wanted to get my degree, even though I always was an AB student all throughout my life. And then my last couple of years of school, I kind of was, I wasn't really applying myself all the way, because I wanted to really be a wrestler. I didn't know how to do it. It seemed like a far-fetched dream that wasn't realistic. And it wasn't, at that time, there weren't any wrestling schools in Las Vegas. Like that now there's a couple schools. There's one really big one here. And the internet was still wasn't what it is now. And it was just, going to finish my degree, get my degree, and then I'll kind of figure this out. And then the Tough Enough thing came along, and I was like, I'm going to send in a video again. I was all jacked up and 275 pounds, 22 years old, full head of hair, and just cut a promo in my dad's kitchen and sent it in. I had, I think, one day to drop my classes at UNLV to get a partial refund, or to get my a certain amount of money back for that semester. Mind you, I hadn't been picked yet for the show. I was so confident I was going to be picked. I dropped my classes. I got my refund. And then I went and adopted another dog, because I was so confident I was going to be moving away from professional wrestling. And thank God I managed for a few days. I didn't go to school. Dad had left. I came home when I normally would come home, and showed up with a dog on the last day. He was not happy. What are you doing? And I said, well, I'm going to be a wrestler. Wasn't thrilled about that, and dropping out of school. Luckily, WWE called the next day. And mind you, I still didn't make it. They just called me to let me know that I was going to be able to be one of the 50 participants to go to Venice Beach and try out to be maybe one of the final 8. So the father was slightly relieved that I at least got picked for that. He then goes, well, what if you don't make it? And I said, well, then I'm fucked. But it all worked out very well for me. I've always been very confident in myself when I know So at that point, it was all going to become physical. And I felt very good about that. And it all worked out.
So when you went there and it was the 50 of you, you said, what happened? Because you ended up getting cut from Tough Enough, right?
Eventually, yeah, they narrowed it down. The first day was, man, it was brutal. There was a lot of physical challenges. It was a level 3 obstacle course, marine-like obstacle course in the sand. They had ambulances out there. A lot of guys had to get stretchered out from being so blown up. And I was in really good shape, or so I thought. A lot of the guys were going really slow, trying to pace themselves. And I just said, the hell with it. I'm gonna max myself out on that. I want to try to have the best time. Nobody would expect that. And I go through the first 3/4 of that obstacle course. I hadn't missed a beat. The drill sergeant and Bill DeMott never said one word to me. I was flying through it. And then finally I got to something in the sand. My legs just completely went dead and I started stumbling. They got all over me, in my face. It took everything I had to complete that obstacle course that first day because I blew my load early, essentially. And anyways, got through the promo stuff, the bench press 225. I think me and Zeke had the 2 top bench presses for the day after doing the obstacle course. I actually, funny story, that first day, as soon as I got done with the obstacle course, I was so gassed. I went to an ambulance that nobody was at. I grabbed an oxygen mask and tank and grabbed it and went and hid behind a bathroom and just sat on an oxygen tank for about 20 minutes without anybody knowing where they were looking for me. But I knew my body was so physically burnt out from that I needed to do something. And, I had to go to the bathroom. Sorry, guys. And we've been looking all over for you. Go. It's your turn on the bench. Let's go. And it had a hell of a performance on the bench press. Did good on all the promo stuff for what they were looking for. Ran the ropes. And made it to the final, the second day for the top 25 guys. So they cut it down by half. The next day, like only 13 guys showed up or something like that. There were guys that got picked for the second day that didn't show up. I made it that day. We'd had to do a level 10 obstacle course, and I breezed through it because I paced myself. So it looked really good the first day. So it all worked out really well. Got on, made it onto the show. I broke my ribs really early on. Went through the whole show with broken ribs. Because we were all learning, we were all training with each other, learning all the bumps. And when we weren't doing like the show on SmackDown, the little contest, we were training back in Stamford. It was very physical, very long days, and as it should be. But we're learning with each other. I broke my ribs really early on a bad hip toss with one of the guys, and it was partially my fault, partially the guy had spun me. Went through that with cracked ribs, and then they broke, and then I was told I was going to probably be taken off, but then they had me like voted off. So it all worked out perfectly. And then they signed me after the show. They told me we're probably going to be calling you. So, and they did.
When you originally got cut, did you think like, oh shit, it's all over? Like, get my dreams done? No,
not at all. I knew they'd had interest, and I'd done well up to that point in the training and everything. And the psychology obviously takes a lot longer, but it was, when they said that, we're probably going to be calling you, I felt pretty confident that they were going to call me. I didn't think they were just blowing smoke up my ass or anything at that point.
And who was it that actually called you and offered you the deal?
I don't even remember who I dealt with. The Ty Bailey was there, I think. And it might have been Ty Bailey of all the people. They called and offered me a developmental deal to go to Deep South Wrestling. Bill wanted me for Deep South, and Al was going to be taking over OVW. And then, so I spent a year in Deep South and then a year in OVW after that.
DeMott was one of the trainers down there?
He was the trainer, yeah.
We've heard a lot of the stories. We've heard them firsthand ourselves, talking to people about maybe some great prospects might have left who might have stayed for a different trainer. What was your experiences, good and bad, working with Bill DeMott?
I probably had it tougher than anybody from him. And I will say, though, granted, do I agree with everything looking back? No. He toughened me up tremendously, though. And he always said, now, would I want to do that now in my career, go through that kind of training? Absolutely not. But at that point, being 22 years old and had a wild hair up my ass, it was physically and mentally the hardest point of my entire wrestling career. And nothing was ever as tough as that. And he always said, if you can survive me, the road will be easy with WWE. And being a WWE superstar is such a physically demanding job, mentally, physically, emotionally, the sacrifices you have to make. And he mentally tries to fry you. And that if you've been in the business, do you need to be going through that at a different point? that's a different story. But for my position where I was in my introduction to pro wrestling, I contribute a lot of that to my success because a lot of the aggression and physicality, intensity that I'm able to portray on TV is because of the fundamentals he instilled inside of me. He used a lot of negative reinforcement. That's how he was. But my thing is, I survived it. And the guys that couldn't survive it, I don't want to say anything bad about anybody, but if you're a man, you could survive it. So and some of the people that couldn't survive it, they're more outspoken on it. But they had the wrong attitude about it to begin with, and he killed me. He would bring me to his house. He would treat me great. He treated me like a piece of shit in front of everybody else. But I thanked him for it, and to this day I'm thankful for it because he did what he said. He goes, if you could survive me, being on the road will be a breeze, and nothing was ever tougher than that. Very thankful for it, and it wasn't easy, and I hated him for a period. But I love him to death, and he is a great human being.
That's the exact same thing Mike Knox said when we had him on. He said he was a great human being and how, in front of people he was one way, but then when they were alone, he was another way.
Absolutely, and I got to see that side of him, having tears when I was leaving Deep South Wrestling and being emotional, and then other times, just completely making a fool of me and embarrassing me, and that was his way of teaching. He came up through a certain way. And a lot of guys, either you knew how to handle him or you didn't. And I respond very well to positive reinforcement. He didn't provide that necessarily. And that's all right, because I had to find that for myself. I shouldn't need that from anybody to begin with. And I'm very thankful for that. And the guys that got to see the real him know that he is a good, decent human being. And he was just wrestling. It could bring out the worst in anybody. Too, and at that point he had a broken neck and he was training, and I'm sure he still wanted to be an active wrestler, and he has all these young guys he's training, and he'd been through a divorce, he'd lost a lot, and whenever you do this job and you make money doing this job, to lose that money for whatever the reason, you work so hard for your money in professional wrestling. So to see this, looking back and seeing what he had went through, like I understand it so much better now, and he wanted everybody to do as well as they could, but he wanted to instill a certain level of toughness and respect into everybody because he came up that way through Johnny Rods, and I understand that, and I get that, and I'm grateful for it because it helped me a lot as my career moved on.
You have this great attitude about yourself, this great confidence, and that served you well. Also, your positive thinking. As you released in January 2007, you willed yourself back in November 2007. You transferred to OVW, transferred to FCW, and you actually kind of previewed the Ryback character a little bit. But in October 2008, we were introduced to Skip Sheffield. How in the fuck did you become a cowboy?
Yeah, so that was a blessing and a curse. So CM Punk and Undertaker came down to FCW one day for promo class. Developmental promo class is probably one of the most stressful things a developmental talent will go through, in that you are around these other guys you're competing with, and you got to do your promos at that point in the middle of the ring in front of everybody. And I was fairly new over there, and I was putting in a lot of thought, a lot of effort into my promos every week, and typing up multiple promos and memorizing them and going in there and delivering them. And Dusty was always so good to me. So we knew they were coming down that day. So I had written a promo on The Undertaker and delivered the promo to The Undertaker as he's standing there watching promo class with Punk and Dusty and Dr. Tom and Norman and all the other guys down there. And it was nothing bad. It was just a regular promo, and like we would do. And I guess he had told Dream that he thought the character was too Ryback. It was more Terminator based a little bit, and that it was too 80s. When the Undertaker says something, unfortunately, fortunately, I guess you could say at that point, because they took note of it. And Dusty called me in the following day, and he just told me that the situation, and said we need to find you a different character. In which it felt like he ripped my heart out, because Ryback and creating the name, and when I was released from WWE, and that's the character that got me rehired, or doing that got me rehired essentially. That was me. He goes, I want you to be one of these dumb football players we hire. We're going to make a mockery of these guys that they bring in, these dumb football players. You're a big, dumb football player, and something with that. So I go home and I was pissed off. And
Who told you that?
Dusty Rhodes. So I just figured, you know what? I just want to have fun. And I'd always kind of been serious up to that point, and I wanted to try some new things, and I wanted just to I wanted to let loose. And Dr. Tom, actually, I contribute. Bill DeMott and Dr. Tom are the two guys that really, really helped me in different ways. And Doc helped me by just allowing me. He goes, I just want you to go out there and have fun. I don't give a shit what you do. He goes, just go have fun. He was the first guy that just essentially allowed me to go do whatever I wanted to do. Whereas before there was always guidelines and restrictions and all these things. That is where I thrive when I can let my creative juices just do whatever. And so I'm sitting there watching WWE tapes one night, trying to figure out what the hell I'm going to call myself and how I'm going to be this dumb, happy-go-lucky football player or whatever it was. And I remember my first year in Deep South Wrestling, there was this big jacked-up fireman in Georgia, McDonough, Georgia, where I was at for Deep South Wrestling, that always worked out at the Gold's Gym. And his name was Skip. And he was like this badass fireman, but he was the nicest guy in the world. But you could just tell you didn't want to mess with this guy. But his name was Skip. And I always just thought that name was hilarious. And I was like, so you know what? I'm going to call myself Skip. I'm watching a WWE tape, and then a commercial for Sheffield, England came up. And I just remember I go, Skip Sheffield. And I always liked Gary Sheffield, the baseball player, when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah.
And I go, Skip Sheffield. And it just kind of, and I go, okay, I got a name, Skip Sheffield. And then I was in the shower the next day, and I'm literally trying to figure out a catchphrase for Skip Sheffield, this dumb football player. And I'd already decided I was going to be from College Station, Texas, because Dusty was a Texas, A&M Texas guy. He popped for that. He liked that because he didn't like College Station. So, of course, I'm the big dumb football player from College Station. He loved all of that. And then I was like, I started trying to kind of find a way to start cutting my promos and started doing this really stupid Texan accent or whatever I thought was a Texas accent. And I was in the shower, and I knew this guy. He used to be on the Spirit Squad, Nick Mitchell. And he used to always say, what it do? That was always his little thing he would say in developmental. What it do? What it do? He was from Texas. I don't know where it came from, but I just go, yep. What it do? And then I was like, shit, I got a catchphrase now. And then wrote out a promo based off of all of this information that I had, and showed up to promo class. I went and bought a little Dickies Mexican cowboy hat at Walmart and put on a tight pair of jeans and a brown pair of boots. Oiled myself up with butter spray, just because that's what a bit. I played the part from that moment on. Skip Sheffield was this dumb, happy-go-lucky, corn-fed meathead, and I went up there and I cut this promo, and the entire class stood up and applauded. Dusty came out of the office, was ecstatic, and he pushed Skip Sheffield so well and helped me so much and gave me every opportunity to succeed. And it was it was a popular character in FCW, and it got me called up to NXT on the main roster. And then, once Vince saw me, he goes, you're going to make me millions of dollars being yourself. We need to get you away from this character. Don't do it all overnight, but let's start getting away from it. That's a great thing to have somebody tell you, especially Vince. But it was, just starting to feel really comfortable with that character. And I'd worked so hard to get there. And then it was like, what do I do now? And then it was like, okay, I got to start being more serious. But my name is Skip Sheffield.
Right.
Luckily, the ankle injury, and as bad as that situation was, and breaking my ankle and leg and all that, and being out a year and a half was a blessing because it allowed me to reset and come back as Ryback. So it all worked out for the best.
Was that typical, giving guys gimmicks as like a rib? I think of Michael McGillicuddy's name and other examples in developmental at that time. That seems kind of a strange thing. Was that out of the ordinary for them to say, hey, we're giving you a gimmick, but it's really a rib on football players?
No, I don't know. I think Dusty, and again, they're just trying to, everybody has all their own stuff going on, living their own lives, man. And I love Dusty, but he's dealing with how many talents and, just throw something at you and see if you can make it work. And I had nothing at that point. When they told me I wasn't allowed to be Ryback anymore, off the top of my head, I was like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do? In my mind, it was still be Ryback, just get away from the Terminator thing and let me be Ryback. But we weren't there yet. It was an evolution to get to that, and you got to go through these things. And I picked the name. They didn't give me that name. I was just having fun. I thought it was a hilarious name. I'm not worrying about at that point in time, oh, when I get to the main roster, I'm going to be this main event guy stuck with Skip Sheffield. You're not worrying about that at that time. And then once I got there and realized what they kind of wanted to do, then it was like, oh shit, my name is Skip Sheffield. This is really dumb. And but it all worked out. It all lined up for me. And
hey, one more quick thing just to go back. So you were in Deep South, you got transferred to OVW, and then you got released when you were in OVW. Is that right?
Yeah, I was blindsided by that, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
What was the reason?
To this day, don't know. It was one of those, they did random releases at that point. I know they had very high expectations for me very early on. I know that because Johnny told me that on multiple occasions. And I picked up the stuff really, really easily with Al, my first in Tough Enough. And then when they sent me to Deep South Wrestling with Bill, it was a lot of drills and it was a lot of getting the shit beaten out of you in different situations by physically draining you. A lot of 8-hour days, drills, not a lot of matches, but it was instilling basics into me at that point in time, which would carry on with me forever. But unfortunately, I wasn't picking up the psychology part because we weren't really focusing on that first year. By the time I got transferred to OVW, and this is on me because of how I took everything, I was mentally fried. I was very negative. I was very down on myself. The confidence that I'd always had was gone because it was essentially stripped from me, but I let it be stripped from me. This was my first real thing where I was like having difficulty because I was just getting murdered. But he was instilling things inside of me that I couldn't even see at the time. I had improved tremendously that next following year at OVW, but it's still to them, for whatever reason, they released me and two other guys that day. One of the other ones was Seth Skyfire, who nobody was a really great high flyer during that period. Nobody saw him getting released. And another guy was Jack Bull. I like Jack a lot, but he was a little older. He was kind of burnt out, and a lot of guys had kind of saw that one coming a little bit, whereas I got a little blindsided by it. But it was the best thing that ever happened to me because I was mentally very, very down on myself, and I needed to kind of get away and discover who and what I was. And that moment shaped me for the rest of my life being away from there for that period. And I'm forever grateful for it. So.
And how long was it until they re-signed you?
I believe it was just under 2 years. I was out of wrestling. I did some independence when I first left. I didn't have any money. They pay you a little bit of money, your downside when you leave. And I'd had my apartment that I was living in, and Cody Rhodes, actually, we've known each other for a long time. And he said, why don't you come move in with me, and you don't have to pay rent for a couple months or something, and save a little money. And threw away a bunch of my stuff and moved in with him, and was there for a bit and tried to do some independence. Obviously made no money. And it was a really tough experience. I was like, I'm going to have to get a full-time job here. And I didn't want to move home. It would have been easy to move back to Las Vegas and go get a really good job here. Could have got a good job at any of the casinos here and had benefits. And I was so ashamed of myself that I'd let myself down that I just stayed in Louisville and got a job serving. And then I got caught up with a girl for about a year and went through all that and went through a little rough patch with that. And then finally, I always talk about it, came across the book, The Secret, and which just kind of shifted my thinking into a more positive mindset and started giving myself goals and starting to expect more out of myself. And Danny Davis at OVW allowed me back with open arms. And I came back with the Terminator Ryback character that I came up with. I was drinking, watching WWE, the WWE on demand back then when it was on the channel. Went through a whole bottle of Burnett's vodka, flavored vodka, going through cans of dip, just doing everything bad for myself. I'm sitting there and was watching wrestling, and then I flipped the channel and Terminator 2 was on, and I was so loaded. And I'm sitting there and I'm just thinking, this is when everything was kind of starting to fall into place a little bit. And I just said, I'm a machine. I set goals and I accomplish them. And I'm sitting there and I'm just thinking and just beyond drunk. And I'm looking at Arnold, and I just said, Ryback. I'm Ryback. Just kidding. My first wrestling name is Silverback, born Ryan. So it just came to me in a drunken moment. And so I'll forever be thankful for alcohol for creating the Ryback name. Vodka, Burnett's Vodka, and Arnold for coming up with the Ryback character.
One thing that I wish was a drunken haze was the NXT show that you participated in with all those. There was some stuff in there that was fantastic, but a lot of it was this really strange competition putting you guys through your paces. When you were told that you were going to be brought to this show, what was your reaction and what were your expectations?
We had no idea what to think. I don't think they knew what they were doing. It was week to week, and it was none of the WWE pros that they paired us with knew what was going on. Everybody hated the whole thing. I mean, I had fun doing them, but it had nothing to do with wrestling. It had nothing to do with all that stuff. Is you got to understand, Vince has created his own world. He's literally just entertaining himself. He's made a brand that makes money no matter what they do. And you got to think he's seen every wrestling match there is to be seen. He's just doing things to entertain himself at certain points in time. And that was one of those periods where I think Vince was just entertaining himself and watching these young guys come up and do these ridiculous things. And I can say that, there was a guy or two that maybe didn't have a good attitude about the competition, and they showed it. They soured on those people pretty quickly. And so it's again, it just teaches you got to go into things with a good attitude when you're doing that, because it's entertainment, and whatever they ask you to do, you got to do.
So how did the whole Nexus invasion thing happen where you guys attacked Cena and Punk? Was that like a thing they told you that day? Did you know it was coming for a while? Because that was obviously a huge turn for what you guys were doing.
Yeah, that was that day. I remember when I got cut off of NXT, I had no idea what to think, what was going to happen. And I thought I was going to be going back to developmental. And they pulled us all into an office with Vince, Michael Hayes, and John Laurinaitis, and essentially said, we have one shot at this to go out there. And they'd given us a guideline of what they wanted. Essentially, Vince said, if you guys fuck this up, you'll be fired. So the mood was set. And we'd all came up through developmental together outside of Daniel Bryan, who was added in. And there was just a certain level of, it was one of those rare things in wrestling, it's everyone for themselves, essentially, most of the time. This was one of those moments where it was, we all need each other to be successful at this. We've all worked really hard. We've all seen all the work all of us have put in to get this opportunity. We all went away. We had a little discussion and just kind of, everybody was on the same page, and we went out there, and it was just one of those moments that we had no idea how special it was until afterwards, seeing how everybody else was reacting backstage. It was such a cool, rare moment in professional wrestling where it hadn't been done before. Nobody's seen the ring exposed, and the violence, I thought everybody just delivered. It came off very real, and that, to me, that is pro wrestling, the illusion of something real, a real fight. And for whatever reason, people bought it, and the crowd bought it, and the facial expressions from the crowd, everything just added to that eerie mood that was set. And it was something that will live on forever. So I was very thankful to be a part of that with those other guys.
I think one of the elements of it that was surprising was we just basically saw you guys in like obstacle courses and bullshit for like 10 episodes. And now all of a sudden, here you are, a bunch of badasses, a bunch of young badasses storming the ring. Was this something you thought was just booked on the fly, just like your week-to-week NXT experience? Or do you think this is something they had put some thought into?
Really, I don't know. I thought it worked so well because what you just said there, that story of us being essentially kind of embarrassed for 10 weeks, we all were trained wrestlers. I thought it allowed people to buy into the storyline fairly easily, to see our frustration and our rage. But that was one of those things that I don't know, man. Things go week to week there a lot, but there's some things they obviously they do plan out, and they do. That was a major angle for them. I don't think it was something that was thought out for a long period of time, but I don't know if it was something that was just thought of last minute, or if it was somebody pitched an idea, 3 weeks before the finals of NXT. I don't know the exact details on that, but I know it became a priority for them after that first night. based off of that reaction. And they knew, I just remember Michael Hayes said, we're going to be printing money. And we had a nice little run there for a few months with that. So.
Well, you did, but the thing that was peculiar to me as a fan watching was it looked like Wade Barrett was the guy that was being propped up. And at SummerSlam, Team WWE against Nexus, and also in other instances where kind of Cena went over Barrett, or Barrett was not made to look as strong. Do you think, looking back on it now, or even at the time, did you think, wow, we're having our legs cut out from under us a little bit?
Yeah, I missed a lot of that because I broke my ankle, and I was there for the SummerSlam match, and we all felt the same way on that was the wrong decision. Jericho, Edge, they've gone on record to state that was the wrong decision. I don't know if that was a John thing, a Vince thing. I don't know. That was the decision they chose to make. Wade Barrett is a fucking star. He is a main eventer. Anybody who knows anything about wrestling knows that Wade Barrett is a star. Wade Barrett was a star before the rest of us. There, he was on another level. He peaked before us. I firmly believe he'll have the opportunity to go back and hopefully be used in a great capacity once again for another run at some point when he's healthy and feeling good again. But there's just things there, man. That's wrestling. You look at why did they do this? Why did they do that? It makes no sense, but that's what they do, and that's what they're allowed to do because it's their company, it's their business. I don't think that was the right call. I thought we should have went over that night. And I thought we lost a lot of momentum with that, but I broke my ankle 3 days later in Hawaii, and I was gone for the rest of it. And I felt bad watching it on TV, watching it all fall apart. And I felt very guilty myself that I felt like I'd let everybody down and with the ankle injury and things as bad as they were for that.
Was that your first dose of WWE backstage politics, knowing that this one guy was really in charge of the destiny of this whole angle and really working against what was best for business?
I think he's done that. And again, I don't know exactly if that was all him that night or if it was Vince. I've seen Vince go out of his way to protect him too. John did business like that for many years. And until WWE brought up enough stars from NXT to where he couldn't control all of them. That's the way John does business. It doesn't mean he's a bad guy or anything like that. It's just, I think in pro wrestling, you need to run with what's hot. When you put your thumb on things, I think that's why you get the backlash from fans that you get today when you don't allow things to organically, naturally happen. That was a natural, organic thing that the people had accepted and there was momentum for it. John could have went over at a point later on down the road. It didn't need to be that first one. That's pro wrestling, man. And that's all part of the game that you got to learn to survive and figure it out. And you got to know when to speak up. And I know Wade had went and said some stuff and Vince had said, nope, that's what I want. So what are we supposed to do? We go out there and we deal the hand that we're given. And there's a lot of bullshit in it. There's only so many spots for so many guys. And whoever wins and loses, half the people are going to bitch one way or the other.
So you were out with your ankle injury, and then when you came back is when you started as Ryback, right?
Correct, yes.
Did they decide right from the get-go that you were going to be a killer and have all these squash matches?
No, this was the ankle injury, man. It's still to this day, I really wish that story could have been told, and that the footage, they have the footage of it, of me breaking my ankle in 3 places and popping up and finishing an entire comeback with Tyson Kidd with nobody knowing. My foot is dangling as I'm breaking my leg with every step all the way to my knee. I don't think there's a lot of guys that would have been able to do that day. And I was running on sheer adrenaline and momentum, and it truly changed the course of my entire career. And it changed my relationship with WWE. I wish fans understood it better because it was a very difficult thing. And then luckily I was able to overcome it. And it allowed me an opportunity to get away from Skip Sheffield. They didn't know what to do with me. Essentially, they fired me. I had to get attorneys. I kept my job. I had to kind of speak up, and I had a huge chip on my shoulder because I went through so much with this, and there were a lot of mistakes made by them, by the doctors. It was a very frustrating thing to live through, but I survived it. But I also, this company that I love and had loved my entire life and always wanted to work for, tried to fire me when I was in a position where I couldn't even walk. And it was very mentally, it was very, very hard to take that in. And there's you hear these bad stories with wrestling and former talents, but to actually physically live it and go through it at that point I had nothing. And had I just said, okay, I'll go along with this, I would have literally been left with a gimp foot and had nothing. And I learned very quickly I was too nice. And I had to learn to speak up, and I had to, not doing this. This isn't right. And I want to move back home to Las Vegas. I've been gone for 7 years. I want you to put me on the road. And John Laurinaitis, that day when he called to fire me, and I got it reversed, and where he took it back, and I had to go get attorneys, and we went through all this shit. And I told him, in 1 year, I'm going to be the biggest star you guys have on the fucking roster. Mark my words. I promise you, John. And I did that.
You did.
They gave me the opportunity, though, to do that. But that's what I talk about when I tell people that it strained my relationship with them. And when everything was red hot, how everything got taken away, it all made perfect sense to me why it got taken away. It was all a game, all from the beginning. But I'm very thankful for all of it. And I remember they flew me to Stanford to meet with Ty Bailey, Hunter, and Stephanie. This is a true story. I just had another surgery on my leg. The second surgery, they flew me out to meet with Stephanie to talk about some character stuff. So many errors were made in this surgery, the first one, where they put metal through all my myofascial tissue. They put 2 screws through my perineal and superficial nerves. The doctor caused a lot of nerve damage. That to this day, my big toe still doesn't work. And I don't have quite 100% strength in my left ankle and calf, and my balance is off. But my leg, they went in and they repaired all the myofascial tissue that was all torn. They went back and like fixed all that. But my leg, I had to fly out to Stanford, and the plane ride, I shouldn't have been flying because I had all this nerve damage. I had all this metal through my nerves still. So my blood flow was extremely poor in my leg. I'm very lucky this didn't go another direction. My calf swelled up so bad on the plane ride out to meet Stephanie that when I got there, the stitches on my leg had busted open, and my leg was bleeding out through all the scars where they'd cut to fix my leg. And while I'm in there meeting with Stephanie, they had to lie me on the ground and elevate my leg on their desk because I'm bleeding as I'm trying to have a meeting with Stephanie about what we're going to do with me coming back, which is one of those just fucked up, extremely funny moments looking back. And she's always been so great with me and so kind. And we had a great conversation that day, but they're trying to figure out what to do with me. I'm literally nowhere near able to wrestle. I had all this damage still done to my leg. My leg is busted open through just swelling, bleeding in Stephanie's office. And they flew me back home. We waited a little longer, finally got cleared, everything. Okay, I'll be able to come back. They flew me back out again to meet with Hunter and Ty and these other guys. And all right, what are we going to do? And I did I remember I showed up in a suit. I brought a briefcase, all these ideas. I typed up all these ideas, all these names, and I gave them sheets. I gave them packets. All right, this is what we could do. These are some storylines. All this stuff is just so ridiculous because they don't look at any of that shit. It's all just wasted effort. But I did my best. I was like, I've been out for this long, and and Ryback was my number one name. They allowed me to be Ryback. I remember it was just like, well, what does Ryback wear? And I go, trunks? I don't know. It was just like we're in there discussing like the outfits and all this stuff. And I finally, Matt Martellero, Kenobi, I can't remember. He was working for them at the time. He was from OVW. And they had me dealing with him a lot. And he was just, we're going to do vignettes for you. I go, I don't want anything. I don't want vignettes. No, because vignettes to me are a curse of death. I just think you don't need them. I go, literally just put me on TV, no explanation, call me Ryback. I will get myself over if you guys give me the opportunity to. I'd said that for months. They had me just doing live events. Initially at Skip Sheffield, then they switched my name back to Ryback, doing live events and going every weekend to TVs for about 6-7 months. And finally, they switched me into a singlet. Vince thought I was fat and wanted me to wear a singlet, which I thought was a big rib. They gave me a black singlet, so I looked like a jacked up, smaller version of Big Show. And I just said, this is a shit. Like, I can't wear this. So I went and then I got it airbrushed, and nobody had anything airbrushed singlet. It was different for that period. Van Dam wasn't with WWE, hadn't been there in some time. He gave me his blessing to go ahead and do the airbrushed singlets, and did the machine designs. And it all kind of came together. And then finally they debuted me. They gave me these guys that were so tiny that I said to myself, this is going to bomb horribly, which it might have been designed. I don't know to this day, but I've always just taken, how can I make this different? How can I make this cool? This has to be a train wreck every week of me just doing a bunch of cool shit to these small guys. And it all came together, man. And it was Hunter's idea to start doing the double shell shock. And then they had me do that for months on end, twice a week. And you talk about pressure, man, because you're in there with local guys. And I'm so thankful for those guys. I spent all day with them when I found out who I was going to be working with. And they really helped me during, once it started getting a little steam, they were helping me a lot during that. But had those guys gone out there and gotten nervous and fucked up, that would have reflected on me. And nobody out of all those guys, nobody let me down all those months of doing that. And it created for some good TV, and it allowed me to get to a certain level without even wrestling a WWE superstar.
Well, and it definitely did. And even when you did get to the point of doing pay-per-views, you were kind of, squashing some of the underneath guys, and you really got over. And it happened that there was a circumstance where CM Punk and Cena were in a feud, and Cena got hurt. And all of a sudden, what are we going to do? And we got this guy who is just over like Grover, waiting in the wings. And they had this little moment where, CM Punk looks up and there's Ryback. What was the reaction to everybody to this decision to kind of throw you right into this main event scene?
No idea, but off the top of my head, I know exactly the scene you're talking about. And I'll never forget, that's when everything started getting fishy. The first thing that happened with that is when Punk looked up and saw me, that was a live shot. They edited out the crowd reaction to that, so it was dead silence. And I don't know why they would do that, because it was a very positive reaction. But that was where I was like, why did they do that? That made no sense. They told me that their plans of that, and Punk and me at that point we'd always gotten along up until business was involved. At that high of a level, and I didn't know what was going to happen with all of that. The plan was always for Punk to go on to face Rocket at Royal Rumble, and I was at a point where I'm being tested in the main event to see if I could hang in the main event, and it lasted for about 7, 8, 9 months. I think I lost 7 straight pay-per-views while being the number 2 merchandise seller in the company, and a lot of shit happening during all that, but it was a great learning experience, and I knew right from the get-go I knew I belonged there. From a creative standpoint, it made zero sense to throw that all away, but it made perfect sense knowing what I know with my ankle story and situation, and I'm thankful for all the moments I've had there. I've always played every role that was ever asked of me to the best of my ability.
How did, because you said you and CM Punk got along, what was like the first few instances where there was some problems between you two?
I don't know when it got bad. I remember he was beat up, man. He wasn't happy at that point. We'd never had any issues up until any of that. And I remember one time we were over in England. I gave him this slam. It was like the world's strongest slam, but I didn't fall down with it. It was like a Road Warrior type just slam where you just pick the guy up in that position, like the world's strongest slam that Mark Henry does. But then you just set him back down on the ground. So it's almost like Wade Barrett's wasteland from the shoulders, but I'm holding the guy by my chest. And I dropped him on the ground, and it wasn't hard or anything. And I remember he was really upset after that match, and because he was all beat up. So things like I couldn't give him a body slam without hurting him. And I'm not going out there doing things as hard as I can. I knew he was beat up. And I felt for him because I knew he was killing himself and working an insane pace and schedule and whatnot. But at the same time, I'm a power wrestler, and I'm being put in this position that I have to go out there and still be Ryback, and I got to get myself over still at this point too. So it was just a really screwed up thing, man. And it was just one of we made the best of everything, and I always enjoyed wrestling him. I had a lot of respect for him. Seeing him have to pull off some big, huge promos and I remember we had to do a ladder match, man, that TLC, that when he had an injury, and we had to do it later, the beginning, that Raw in January where the lights went out when I had the championship, that whole deal. And he had a huge promo with The Rock at the end of the night, and it was sheets and sheets of text I don't know if it was like 3 or 4 pages. It was something ridiculous. And so all day, he's dealing with having to do this promo at the end of the night. We couldn't talk about the match at all. So then, like, that, to me, I was upset because you got guys, we're the main event, and it's a TLC match. You got to plan some shit out. He also, though, has this huge promo, which he obviously was placing more importance on that because that was where he was going. And he's doing a promo with The Rock later on that night, which he needs to be on top of this game, obviously, for that. But we also have this big match we got to do on Raw that's making up for the pay-per-view that we couldn't do. And but we went out and we nailed it, man. And and a lot of that was on the fly. And I remember texting him after, and I go, man, that was a lot of fun. And he was very positive towards the whole thing. And up to that point, I didn't know there were really any issues outside of a couple of those small things. But as time went on, I remember one of the things that he wasn't happy about was he started doing, if you remember with the Feed Me More taunt, they took everything away. They didn't want me doing the Feed Me More. And when I had turned, he had started then doing CM Punk chants, trying to do the Feed Me More taunt. But and to his credit, he was trying to do that taunt years ago in ECW, and it never really took off or anything. He never did it consistently, and it kind of went away. And I came up and it all came together I never knew he'd even done it at that point. And I'd got it from the Bloodsport movie, trying to time something with the Feed Me More, and it all kind of came together. And I remember I had words with him because I'd kind of asked a couple people, like, why is he trying to take my gesture? And when you're at that level, everything's important. You just don't do something that somebody else is doing. And to me, it kind of just seemed it seemed like his intentions weren't the
purest.
Weren't the purest. And I remember after I saw they talked to him or somebody said something to him. He stopped doing it for a bit. Then he started doing it again. The crowd, nobody was chanting CM Punk with the hand gesture. And I remember I was getting changed and I just said, fuck this. And I went and we got into it, had words. And then like 2 weeks later or a week later, he came up to me and he goes, hey, I was doing this first. And I just said, well, I got it over. You didn't. And he never liked that. And it was, it was what it was. We're all big boys. And I just think I thought it was petty to do it to begin with after I had been doing it and established it as part of my deal. And I was told to stop doing it. And I don't hate him. I have a lot of respect for him. And I'm proud that he's gone on and tried to do other things and whatnot. But when you're dealing with a lot of money at that level and that kind of shit happens, man. And like, I don't have any ill feelings towards him. It's just wrestling brings out the worst in people at different times.
Hey, Robbie, we have a new sponsor on board with Wyatt Ended. We would love to welcome Pleasure Products USA. Now, Pleasure Products USA is your online destination for innovative, quality, and affordable items geared towards men's sexual pleasure.
That's right, Matt. Pleasure Products USA is here for those ready to have a match, but is lacking an opponent.
Well, then ring the bell and head on over to stopusingyourhand.com today.
Grab a rest hold with one of their exciting products, including their signature product, the 3V Starlet Stroker. That's right, the 3V Starlet Stroker has an amazing realistic internal texture, multiple vibration settings, and for the finishing maneuver, an actual voice of an adult film star is recorded to the device to make more than the crowd pop.
So you're telling me that on this device, the 3V Starlet Stroker, you actually get an actual adult star's voice on there?
An actual adult star. I mean, who wouldn't want to be pinned by Lauren Phillips, Kate England, Ariella Ferreira, Carmen Valentina, Nikki Huntsman, or Eden Blair?
I don't know anybody. And fans of Wyatt Ended can get an extra 10% off their purchase by entering promotional code Wyatt Ended at checkout.
To earn yourself a 5-star rating today by visiting stopusingyourhand.com. Don't get counted out or disqualify yourself from satisfaction. Pick up a 3V Starlet Stroker or any of their other exciting products today.
Don't forget, guys, Pleasure Products USA is where their business is your pleasure. It seems a little funny to me when you look at Ryback being put in the main event, losing the 7 straight pay-per-view main events, by means of Brad Maddox stopping your freaking undefeated streak, the Shield and all those things going on, going to the Royal Rumble, looking really strong in it. What I think is kind of a clusterfuck of a heel turn with your match with Mark Henry at WrestleMania, that it seems as a fan, it didn't make any sense at all. And it didn't help you if they really wanted to turn you heel. to become this strong character. Looking back at it now, how do you attribute this, 7-month kind of area where you were on the top and they just kind of defined you down so much?
Well, I could say they tried. My numbers did nothing but go up in those 7 months, by the way, even though they limited my merchandise. And that's fine. That is what it is. That's why when I left WWE, I've spoken nothing but the truth, trying so that my fans and my followers can thoroughly understand when they look back, why did all these things happen the way that they did? This is my opinion on why things happened the way they did based off of my ankle injury and the relationship we had. Am I right on that? I don't know. That's just my opinion. But you go back and you look at these moments that if you're a business and you have this guy that is making you all this money, why would you do that? That's all I ask. And that was one of those moments. That was the first. I went to Vince in Gorilla that day. I was under the impression that the finish was going the other way, as I believe everyone involved thought that. And then a couple days before, I was told Mark's going over. And then I was told the actual finish that they wanted me to pick him up and they wanted me to trip and fall on my face and get knocked out to be pinned on WrestleMania, to then come back to spine buster him and then hit him with my finish. I just said, well, why don't we just do the finish?
You're not strong enough to slam him, but you're strong enough to spine buster him and shell shock him.
Yeah. It was one of those. And I went to Vince before. I go, what are we doing? And he goes, this is going to be our first. This is what I want. He goes, you're getting embarrassed tonight. And that's why you're turning. You failed. You fell on your face on the grandest stage of them all. And that's what did it in for you. Like, this was supposed to be, but not once did we mention that and anything going forward. So it was all, they could do whatever they want to do. Anybody who has anything negative to ever say about me, I've always gone out and done everything that was always asked of me to the best of my ability. We did that to perfection, exactly how they wanted. And that next night on Raw, that reaction I got was as loud as any reaction up to that point. So again, in the merchandise numbers were through the roof at that point still. Then I turned, and then everything was taken away. All my merchandise was taken away, and it is what it is. They allow heels to sell merchandise, but they didn't want me to sell merchandise during that period, and they have every right to do that. It's their company, their business, and knowing what I know and what I went through, that was my opinion on why that all happened. And did it make sense? No.
How was working with John as a heel?
I loved working with John. I've always put him over working in the ring. He knows what he does well. He knows how to listen to a crowd, and I learned a lot from him. And I was able to take that on with me. And so working him was never an issue. It was a lot of fun, and it teaches you that you don't have to do a million things out there to get a great crowd reaction. I am very grateful for having that experience. And that was how it was explained to me. They wanted me to become a better worker, which I think that heel run did that for me because it allowed me more freedom and more control to have control in my matches and whatnot, and not plan as much stuff out. And I got a lot of that from John. So I'm forever thankful for that. And I don't think John's a bad human being or anything like that. Again, it's pro wrestling. There's a lot of money on the line, and he's very protective of his money. And I get it, as I would be, and I am. So but working him was always a great experience.
Now you're doing the bullying character, and then that kind of got taken away, but it was pretty cool. What was the reason that it just ended?
No reason. It was. I think it was because it was working, and I was having a lot of fun.
Of course.
And Heyman had paired himself with Axel. Axel had his run with Punk. That was coming to an end. Paul needed to keep himself on TV. They figured that was a way. Paul and Punk were always working together, strategizing. What can we do for the next 2 months? And then while they're doing those 2 months, they're figuring out what they're going to do for the next 3 or 4. That's what they do. It was told to me that I was going to be going back into the main event again, working with Punk, with Heyman by my side. So looking at it from that position, I'm doing these bullying things, kind of not really working any programs. And then all of a sudden it's okay, you're back in the main event. So what are you going to do? You're going to go back because you're going to get great paydays and you're going to be working in the main event. And you don't know what the end result's going to be until you get to that day. And then we're going down this path exactly again. It's like, and that kind of became a common theme for my career there is I had a great win-loss record, but from a TV standpoint, but big match record, I always tended to lose the big matches that were very that in wrestling, pro wrestling, those big matches are what take you to the next level. And so that was starting to get pretty frustrating for me at that point. The Paul Heyman thing did everything that was asked of me for that. It was never meant to be. Paul aligning himself with me was never to be a long-term thing. It was to keep him on TV for the next couple of months and to keep him relevant. And that's all that it was meant to be. And it was at that point, just being a good soldier, and I'm still fairly new. You do what's asked of you. You're dealing with backstage politics, and people in pro wrestling, everyone looks out for themselves. And as much as I would try to do that, I was always very positive and optimistic that I could overcome anything. But you put enough dents and dinks and chinks in the armor, it's like it starts taking it away from you a little bit time after time there. And the Paul thing, it was never a good fit. I don't need a spokesperson. I can speak for myself, whether people believe that or not. I didn't need him, and he didn't need me, but he wanted me to keep him on TV for a couple months to get him a couple more paydays, and it is what it is. And again, I like Paul. I think Paul's an extremely intelligent human being, and he's very good at keeping himself in the mix in pro wrestling. In 2018, he is still relevant. It was never like, let's put Paul with Ryback and let's bring Ryback to the next level. That wasn't the intention. It was, let's do this with Ryback. We can get a couple more out of this. And WWE pulling me out of the bullying thing to do that. And that's what it was.
After the Paul Heyman deal, because you had kind of a muted face turn when you stuck up for yourself against Heyman. And then you're kind of, to my vantage point, thrown into kind of a throwaway tag team with former Heyman dude, Curtis Axel. But you guys made the best of it and had a good tag team, but nothing really was ever put behind that tag team.
Absolutely not. And it was, I had a lot of fun. Curtis Axel's a guy that I consider a great friend. He's one of the guys, he's such a good human being. And I wish they would do more with him too. He's a great family man. He's a great human being. I felt bad because I felt like I was kind of like I always call that my punishment period, which Vince denies, but it was my punishment period. But I feel like Axel took the brunt of that. They would do little things with that where we wouldn't get entrances on TV, but we were working live, every live event. We would do main events oftentimes, tag up main events, but we were used on TV in this weird fashion, and we would get some wins here and there, but they were never fully behind us. We did a lot of things on WWE.com. We did a lot of great things that just based off people's feedback from the WWE.com stuff, and they never wanted to show any of that. And it was, I wanted to be a singles competitor, but I knew it was important. I felt like that was Axel and me together. When you have a tag partner, you owe it to them to give them your best too. And I always did that with him. And I had a groin injury that I strained one of my groins. Then I strained my other groin. And then I ripped both my abs off right above my deal. The most painful thing I've ever had.
How did that happen?
The one happened with Titus O'Neil threw me in the ring and I landed funny and it strained my groin. It was just a freak accident. It was nothing against Titus. He's a strong fucking guy. I can give you that though. And then you're working 5 days a week. At that point we were, you don't have any downtime. So I'm working with a strained groin on my inner thigh, and I'll never forget, it was starting to feel better. I was in Detroit. Go figure. This is just the luck that you have when you're full-time WWE superstar that people don't understand. So I deal with this. For a few months, my groin's just killing me, but I'm making the best of it. I'm wrapping it up. I'm wearing compression shorts, walking my bags into an airport in Detroit after a SmackDown on Tuesday. So I'm going to have a couple days off. My groin is actually feeling really, really good. What do you think happens? I slip on ice in Detroit in the parking lot, and my legs do the splits with my bags.
Oh.
And the groin completely agitated on a whole other level now. I fall down on the ground. I get up. I go, fuck. I could barely walk at that point. Like it strained it on a whole other level. And I was like, what am I going to do? And I get in, I go home, go back on the road. I'm working. Finally, probably from overcompensating, my right groin gets strained. And I don't know what moment happened on that. I just know I'm several months in now and I got 2 strained groins. I'm in a lot of pain. My balls were completely swollen every night. All that stuff is all connected all into that whole area. It's so sensitive. So I'm working, and finally we're on a European tour, and I could barely move. Again, you're in a tag team. I wanted to take some time off. You don't do that. You don't let your partner down. That's just the mindset you get in. And Roman Reigns gave me a Samoan drop. Again, nothing. This wasn't Roman. It was just the move. It was a freak thing. I was already injured. My left ab ripped off because both groins were strained. So it's pulling on your low abs while that's happening. And then I took this Samoan drop and I literally just felt my ab tear. And I go, oh, and I just rolled to my side. He covers me, and now I'm in pain at a whole other level, right above my deal. Oh, God, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to keep working for a couple more months. And then finally, I'm wrestling Big E in California. My right ab rips off. Now I'm really fucked. No sex, nothing for months. Like, I was just in so much physical pain. You put this company and everything above everything else in your life. And I'm just like, what am I doing? I'm going crazy now. And we're in Las Vegas. We did a 6-man tag match, which it was me, Axel, and Randy Orton versus, I think, Sheamus and 2 other people. I'm sorry, I can't remember them, but it was in Las Vegas. I wasn't supposed to wrestle because I told them I needed to go get fixed. And they went and they sent me for an MRI, and they discovered the 2 tears right by my deal. They go, okay, you can't tag into the match. Just stand on the apron all night. And then sure enough, we get out there, and it's in my hometown, and the crowd is really pro Ryback, chant after chant after chant. Randy looks at me, and I just say, fuck it. He tags me in, and I come in and I do some stuff, and it was a lot of fun. But then I went away and got my core muscle tears fixed. It was a painful experience. But that was the end of Ryback. Right then, I left, I got fixed. When I came back, we chose to go a different direction. But I always felt bad for that. You know, I will have nothing but positive things to say about Curtis Axel and my time with him. It was honestly wasn't the best career-wise, money-wise, wasn't the best period for me, but fun-wise, it was fun as fuck to go through that with him. So,
So you went back being like the Feed Me More babyface Ryback again, right?
Yeah, I was in San Antonio, Texas, and Joey Mercury, who again, great guy. He's helped me a lot throughout my career and one of the great minds in wrestling. And I hope he's back with WWE at some point because he should be. He came up to me and he goes, "You're back." I go, "What?" He goes, "You're back." I go, "I know. It's my first day back at TV. I'm standing right here." He goes, "No, you idiot. Feed me more." And I go, "Get the fuck out of here." He goes, "No, you're back. Like, your back is to Feed Me More Ryback." And then I instantly got really nervous because I had quit doing my original entrance that I did. I had to go back and watch a video of my entrance. I forgot, like, I was so mentally fucked up from what I went through for the year. And I remember that crowd when I came out, man, I got goosebumps. The crowd was so receptive towards that. And I always was very thankful for San Antonio because that I was very nervous for that one, because I didn't know what to expect. So it was one of those cool moments in my career looking back. And Bo's awesome, Dallas. I came up with him through developmental and couldn't have been out there with the better guys. So,
and it was kind of a strange deal where you were fired by the authority, and the only way you could be brought back is if Super Cena defeated Rollins, Kane, and Big Show. You came back, but things we're headed a certain direction, but one thing that kind of sticks out to me is you were given a run with the IC title. What do you think was the thinking in giving you that opportunity at that point?
My personal opinion, and based off knowing how things worked, is they were getting ready to offer me a new contract. They hadn't yet. They told me they were putting the IC title on me. They put the IC title on me, and then they offered me a new 3-year deal. And the amount of money was barely more than what I was already making. Granted, you make more than your downside anyways when you're used, but the thing is you want a high downside because it holds them responsible. Your weekly checks are much better, and you get paid more per live events. When you sign for a lower downside, which a lot of guys typically do, and you shouldn't, it's not a good business decision. They don't have to pay you that much. Road expenses and everything, you kind of can fuck yourself over. If you're not used really well, you end up not making a lot of money, and that happens a lot. And this was one of those, after going what I went through as far as creatively and whatnot, and seeing my money fluctuate and going from making over $1 million my first year to not making that at any other point in my career and working even harder. It's very frustrating. And I look And I just simply, I knew what was going on. And that's kind of what started the going back and forth of, no, that doesn't look good enough to me. And this is all done respectfully, and with Mark Carano and Hunter having meetings and whatnot. And this is what I'm looking at. This is what I want. And I was really, really hurt at this period, by the way. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. I just knew my back was really, really bad. But I just chalked that up to just taking bumps and doing all this power stuff, that it was just regular muscle stuff. But it was actually something much more that we'll get into as we go on. But it would have been nice to believe that was a thing that was them giving me a reward for all the effort and hard work and whatnot. I think it was just simply a ploy to put me in a good mood to sign the contract that they offered me.
To placate you.
And then when I didn't, the title was taken off of me shortly thereafter. And granted, I got staph infection for a few weeks there, and that was all a freak deal. It wasn't a memorable run. And me and KO and like working with Kevin and putting him over a couple times, like you look at Kevin, he always is given time on pay-per-views. You look at our two things, we were given very little time. Just things like that, man. And where I go out and would do 20, 25 on live events, 15 on live events, night in, night out. And then you get there and then like you see that, oh, we're given 7 or 8 or 6 minutes. And it's frustrating.
How much of a parallel do you see between yourself and Daniel Bryan, where you both were kind of these, in the fans' eyes, you were the people's champions, but in the corporation, maybe you were this necessary evil, because the fans liked you, so we got to use them, It seems very similar to me to the Daniel Bryan situation.
Similar, I would agree on that, but I think we have two different audiences. I am hated by the internet, or a small minority of the internet wrestling fans. Daniel Bryan is loved by them. I always appealed to kids and families. To me, I always took it as I was doing my job when the kid's dad would come up and just give me a fist bump and go, "You're badass. I don't even like wrestling, but I like you." That to me tells me I'm doing my fucking job right.
But the parallel is that the same fans who are chanting "Feed me more" are the same fans saying yes.
Yes.
And according to what I've heard from you, and of course watching Daniel Bryan, it wasn't necessarily in coordination with what the people in the back wanted people to be cheering.
I wouldn't disagree with that at all, but for me, and I always put up with everything there, and I never wanted to leave either, and we'll talk about all that, but the injuries and everything changed my whole way of thinking, because I couldn't stay and fight it out anymore. I had to get away. I had to get away, or I wouldn't be doing this at all. I don't know. I think we appealed to different audiences, and I think there is some of that, his audience that does like me and whatnot, but it's similar in, we were both at the same time too, gaining popularity. And I always thought it was looking at that. To me, and me and Dan have a lot, and we get along very well, and we're good friends. And when I was there, and we talked more when I was there, obviously, and he's a busy man with his family and on the road all the time. But I'm of the belief, and I know Dan shares similar beliefs in pro wrestling, that you run with what is hot. The fans, that's how they feel that they are making the superstars. And when you go against that creates the backlash and the outrage. Now, do I agree with a lot of them, how they conduct themselves and how they go about doing it? No, absolutely not. There's no place for it. But that is why we are in this position we are in, of people being so upset all the time. It's because we have ignored these moments through years of this modern day wrestling, of guys that have come up that the fans were behind, that nothing came about of it to the fullest degree. And it creates this backlash and outrage. Roman is getting a lot of that bullshit, and it's none of Roman's fault. Roman's a great fucking guy, and he busts his ass, and he gives his blood, sweat, and tears to professional wrestling, and he sacrifices his time from his family. I've done battle with him many nights, and he is a warrior. And it sucks to see that he's on that receiving end of that. But again, he's just going out and doing what his job. He's playing a character, and he's doing, and but there's all these moments of time, and with Zack Ryder, Daniel Bryan, his period before they used him better. With me, there's all these other moments and other guys where the crowd was fully behind them, and it never really came to fruition.
To switch it up a little bit, back to who we were talking about earlier, CM Punk, when he did his interview on Cabana's podcast, do you think when fans heard that, they looked at you differently after that?
Yeah, Punk was better than that. But Punk, was very frustrated, and he didn't just talk bad about me. He talked bad about several people. And I don't hate him for it. I understand his frustrations. We have a lot of similarities with how things worked out, actually, and whatnot. But I always took offense and like the steroid guy thing. Like, to me, it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? That to me is just an insecure, jealous comment. That's not.
Yeah.
I'm doing the same drug testing you're doing, and I am completely outside of being on testosterone replacement therapy, which keeps you at normal testosterone levels, mid-normal, which is not taking steroids, abusing steroids, or anything of that nature. It's like, don't fucking knock me for killing myself and looking a certain way because I have these genetics to look this way that you don't have. Like, every human being is different. Like, to me, that came across very petty, insecure, and jealous. Like, he had a personal agenda to bury me, and he has a strong following, and they fully bought into it. And I received death threats and nothing but hate. And to this day, there's still fans that hate me based off of the things that he said. And I don't agree with it. And, I'm sure he wasn't in a good place as far as he wasn't happy and whatnot. But I just thought it was again, if I have personal issues with somebody, I'll tell the truth on the situation, but I could separate it and still say the good things about them. I just felt like it was just a way to try to make me look bad. And you'll never hear anybody go back and look throughout my whole career of anybody saying I hurt them. There's some people taking WWE storylines where they would put on WWE.com that I hurt Punk's knee, but that was a way to write him off of TV for a month or 2 months, whereas I didn't have anything to do with that. But these same fans, oh yeah, Ryback hurts all these guys and he does this and that, and then he comes out and says that, and it didn't do me any favors. I can tell you that much as far as that internet crowd and the some of his followers. But again, he's free to say what he wants to say, but I wasn't the only one that he had badmouthed and all that. So
it's even beyond that, because I think for me listening to it, the worst thing that was said, and it's not like CM Punk went up to you and confronted you and you backed down. And that's what he played it at when he missed the table.
No, that never once. And that never once would happen, nor did happen. He knows it and I know that. And it's, again, karma has a way of working everything out. So he's been through hell here recently. So we'll leave it at that. Seriously, I'm better than that. And we don't need to go down that road. And I wish him nothing but the best for the rest of his future and career.
Well, that's awesome, dude. And that's the only way you can go about it, or else that kind of shit will eat you up, right?
No, yeah, it's just you can't control things that what other people say. And I know who and what I am, and everybody else who's worked with me knows. You're dealing with top spots there with a lot of money on the line. So it brings out the worst in people. Me and Punk, if we saw each other today, I can get along with him just fine. I'm more than I could separate that stuff from who and what I am right now and what happened then. And you're dealing with millions of dollars in top spots. People become very protective of that, and it's not easy to get there. I spoke my mind with him on several occasions. He wasn't happy about that, and then he left, and then he went out and he said what he said. So it is, people are going to believe what they want to believe, and I can't control that.
A lot of this positive mindset you have is something you've talked about and something I firmly believe in, the law of attraction. But one of the ongoing bits on this show is Robbie not knowing what things are. So I'm going to ask Robbie. Robbie, do you know what the law of attraction is?
Is it from The Secret?
That's pretty, there you
Yeah. The Secret is just a small part of it. That introduced it. That was my introduction into the law of attraction. Is essentially thoughts become things. And then the power of our thoughts, and they produce energy, and what we put out into the universe is given back to us. And a lot of people don't have a misunderstanding. I think a lot of people think I'm like this ultra secret guy. The secret is I'm in just to learning and evolving and growing. And the law of attraction is just a small part. There's the hard work. There's a little bit of luck. There's the outside God, energy, the universe, whatever you want to call it. There's things that just happen that we can't control. And the law of attraction is just one of 4 or 5 things out there at play. And I just think having a positive mindset will do you better than having a negative mindset. But I can tell you firsthand, I get fucking angry. I get negative thoughts all the time, and it's that stuff that reminds me, okay, get this shit out of you, and then let's get back on track.
My wife has that book, and I have to. I got to make sure I'll read it this week and follow up with you next week, Matt, about how what I learned from it.
It's fantastic stuff, Robbie, and there's really not that many words per page, so you should be good.
Is there pictures?
So you should be able to get through it pretty quickly. With the audio version, it'll make it, or there's a DVD. You can get some popcorn and make a drink. You'll have a family night with it.
But, honestly, it's what, like you said, Ryback, where thoughts become things, but it's a small part. The wisest guy I've ever known, who's a very big believer in the law of attraction, said, yeah, the law of attraction is great. But if you want a gallon of milk, sometimes the easiest thing to do is just to go buy a fucking gallon of milk.
Yeah. I always understood with The Secret that it's a mindset, but there's the work aspect of it that I've always had. That I just instantly knew that went hand in hand with it. There's a lot of people that will read the book and they're like, that's stupid. I'm not going to just imagine having $1 million and having $1 million. That's not the point of it. It's that you get in this mindset and you start putting these positive thoughts out there, and then you start taking positive actions and actually following through with it, and the things can start happening. And it's not a 100% foolproof plan. It's just a positive mindset, essentially. But I will say, I was actually kind of worried about this before when that became public knowledge that I was like a law of attraction guy. The one thing that the law of attraction does not work for is fucking pro wrestling. That is the worst fucking thing. It will keep you sane in the negativity, but like you can all fuck it. I'm gonna be this. I'm gonna be that. I'm going to win this match, and then you show up. Nope, you're losing. Nope, you're losing. Nope, you're losing.
To a larger extent, outside of the funniness of that, because it is true, is the reality, though, of you getting fired in developmental and choosing to work your way back, of you getting your ankle broken in 3 places and having some fucking doctor mangle you, and you coming back as Ryback, walking away from WWE really on your own terms. That was shit that you created in your brain before it even happened.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Outside factors, outside things happening. My ankle, I never in a million years. And based off the secret's not the fucking Bible. And the secret's not accurate on everything. It's more positive mindset, thoughts become things. That's been around forever. The Secret was designed to make money and introduce this to people and help people, but it kind of is an all or nothing approach based off this book, how you read it. Based off of The Secret, it would have said that I thought my ankle breaking into that I brought that upon myself. Now, I will say that I never once thought that I'm going to break my ankle, blah, blah, blah. That period in time, though, all I was thinking about was how am I going to get rid of this stupid Skip Sheffield name? No joke. And I was so focused on that. And then, bam, this freak accident happens. Oh, my question was answered. So if I look at it like that, now I have this freak accident happen, this horrible thing. I could react to this negatively. I could become depressed. I could get fat. I can get out of shape. I can give up, get fired, fucking, go on and just fucking never be seen or heard of ever again. Or no, this is the best thing that ever happened to me. I can now come back as Ryback. I could be me. I'm going to make this work. That was the mindset that I took when that happened. And that's how I take things that happen to me to this day is these negative things happen and I'm able to put a positive spin on them and fucking make it work. And you'll always be better doing that than going the negative way. So
one thing that really tested your ability to have a positive outlook was towards the end of your career in WWE, at least, where you were booked with Kalisto. And you were booked on the WrestleMania 32 pre-show. And something that I just think is the best thing of all time is the belt that you had made, the pre-show stopper, and referee John Koon telling you in the ring, they want you to take it off, and you said, fuck them. At that point, where is your mindset? Are you like, this shit is over?
Yeah. I had to get away. 100%. I never wanted to leave there. I love WWE. I love WWE to this day. I thank them in my motivational book that I wrote for everything. I simply just speak my truth, and I do not live in fear. And now, will people get upset over certain things I say? And probably but they don't understand. And I need my fans and my followers worldwide to understand why I left and walked away, that I didn't walk away on every independent show I do, that I'm able to get on the microphone. I simply talk to them and just share to them the truth of what happened with me and why I did what I did. And we will talk about that because I think it's very important for people to understand this. But a lot of things, it just goes unnoticed because they're not focusing on that. But the contract stuff, we were kind of going back and forth for a bit. And finally it came down. Vince, they offered me a great amount of money, a very, very solid downside that was very respectable and a lot more than a lot of other guys' downsides. And I handshaked with Vince on that, on the amount of money. I was really hurt. My back, I was with the trainers every day. They were constantly trying to work on my back. And it was becoming, I would wake up in the morning and in the hotel beds, and I thought it was just the hotel beds, but I would be staying in nice hotels with nice beds. And it was getting worse and worse. And it was progressing. That last year, it progressed at a rapid rate. I'd had several meetings with Hunter and Mark Carano. I'm very hard-headed at times. I'm not wanting to admit when I'm injured. And creatively, I was very frustrated at different moments there. And I had moments with Hunter and Mark where I was extremely fucking frustrated. And I would told them, well, I'm hurt. I need rest. But I'm also really upset over creative. Well, what is it? Are you hurt or are you upset over creative? Well, it's both, but I don't know what's wrong with me physically. So it's creative. But I was trying to reach out and kind of tell them I was hurt at multiple points. But I didn't do a good job of expressing that looking back. And I wanted, and maybe that was me looking for a way of them recognizing it and not me, look, I'm hurt. I need time off. I don't know what's wrong with me. My back is really fucked up. And when you're there, you take pride in working and being a workhorse and going week in and week out and having a good spot. And things had started breaking down. And a lot of it with me, the frustration started coming out because I was physically in so much fucking pain that the bullshit then, things that I would overlook years past, I wasn't able to overlook anymore because I was physically hurting so bad. And they'd offered me this contract and everything, and I agreed on the money, but I at this point was so fucking upset, and I knew I needed to leave, and I just didn't. Then I went and I had my attorney change the contract, and they given me a new contract and wanted me to sign it. I had some changes made to it as far as having like the rental cars paid for in the hotels, because I believe that stuff should all be paid for anyways. But the problem is most guys don't make a deal about it. So that then, well, why are you making a deal about it? We have these other guys, and it sucks. It's something that should be taking care of all the guys, sacrificing all their time away from home in this company and with Vince worth billions of dollars or whatever the situation is. And the wrestlers are the ones that have made the product for years on end. And I wanted my name. I created my name. I created all this stuff when I wasn't there. And I trademarked my Feed Me More and the Big Guy. And they wanted me to sign that over. And there was all this stuff that was I was just like, fuck this. I will say, had I signed that contract before these Kalisto matches, that I firmly believe we would have been on the WrestleMania show. The finish would have been different. And I think I would have went on, and I believe that had I signed that contract, there's a fairly good chance that I would have won the World Heavyweight Championship at some point, because that's what Vince had promised me. I didn't sign the contract, though. When I didn't sign that contract and I made the changes to it, everything changed. Put on the pre-show, finish switched, put on the pre-show the following pay-per-view. I was already at that point completely checked out. We were live events, everything, having fun still and all that. I was in pain. I was physically hurt. I didn't know what was wrong with me, but mentally I was just sick of everything. Did my business with Kalisto that following night. Again, to me, we had no build-up for that match. I felt bad for Kalisto in all of this because I felt like he was getting the raw end of the deal, being the champion and not being able. I felt like because this stuff was going on with me, he's dealing with it also as the champion. And I felt like when you're the champion, you should be in the United States champion. You should be featured, and you should be on the pay-per-views and whatnot. And it was something that it sucked all the way around. But that last match in Chicago, all I was simply doing, and this had nothing to do with Punk. Like, this wasn't like me saying "fuck you" to Punk. It was me trying to get heat with the Chicago crowd that loves CM Punk, so that when Kalisto beats me, he is a bigger babyface. All I was doing, and they were so furious that I was doing the Punk stuff. I'm a heel. I'm getting heat. It was working. What's the problem? So that was where I just said, and they said, take off the belt and this, and it was just like, fuck off. I'm not taking off the belt. Come out here and take it off of me. You're not gonna. I knew at that point I was already gone. And then I showed up to St. Louis the next day. They had TV written, and I felt that they were gonna start. I don't want to say embarrassing me, but it was going to be quite a drop on how I was being booked. And again, we've seen this play out with guys before that don't sign contracts and whatnot. And another point that I really, really want to emphasize here that happened, it's somewhere along all this before things even broke down, that changed my mindset completely, was me and Mark Carano. Well, Mark has a really, really difficult job. And he's supposed to be working for talent, but he's talent relations. He works for WWE. He is simply enforcing what is told to him from above, from Hunter, from Vince, and from anybody else. And I said to him, Mark, I got these other things that I want to do. I'm hurt. I didn't tell him how hurt. I just said, I'm hurt. I'd like to take some time off. Can we let my contract expire in August? And I could do these other things and give my body a rest and then, come back eventually. And I was told, we are going to, if you do that, we are going to job you out. We're going to pull you off TV, and then we're going to fire you. So for me, I've been there my entire career, essentially, since I was 22, with a little period away. Now, maybe I should have gone to Hunter and Vince and communicated a little better, but that comes from them in my mind. We've seen them do that to other guys. That's the way the business works. That's how they do business.
Right. They speak through Carano a lot of times.
Yes. That was all I needed to hear. And I was like, well, I'm going to try to do things my way, or I'm just going to leave. And when I showed up to TV in St. Louis, so I think it's important for people to understand that this all was going on for about a year, playing out, or 8 months, better portion of a year. And then when I showed up to St. Louis, I saw TV the way it was written. I went into the office and I told Carano, he was in there with Ric Flair, and I said, I'm going home. Tell them to take me off this shitty TV show. Shitty fucking TV show. And I went back and I got my bags. Carano came in and had a talk with me. And he said, would you like to talk to Vince? I said, I never want to see him again. I want to go home. It didn't make any sense. And maybe I should have, but I was so upset. I didn't want to talk to him with me in that mindset where I was at, and say things that maybe, I would regret later on. And I was very angry, and I just knew I was hurt and I needed to get the fuck out of there. It sucks, man, because I always put that company on a pedestal and love them, as does a lot of guys. But I had to get away, and luckily, best decision I ever made. One, for all the things I'm getting to do, taking some time. I'm 36. I'm still at a good point in my life, but I got to do these other things, and I've learned how to make money without wrestling, although I still wrestle and do all these other things. But had I stayed there, my back, when I left, I got the MRI. 4 of my disc in my back, my L2, 3, 4, and 5, were completely shot and worn down. And had I stayed there for another 6 months to a year, no doubt I would have had to retire, because I would have had to have my back fused in 4 spots. Because when I left, I thought taking that time off, the pain, I didn't know what was wrong with me. I thought the pain would just go away. It got way worse. And I turned into a 95-year-old man, where I'd wake up out of bed and fall to my knees, and just the spasms there was this intense spinal pain that I can't explain. And I started getting the nerve shooting into my right leg. And I was like, what the fuck is going on with me? And I finally, when you're there, you're really, a lot of guys, and guys that wrestle there know this, you're scared to get MRIs because you don't really want to know what's wrong with you. Mm-hmm. And this is weeks and years and months just of killing myself, of picking up guys, working Mark Henry, Big Show, Kane, all these guys, all the picking up 2 guys, all these power moves, catching guys out of the air that rocks your core and your spine, doing the backpack stunner deal, which compresses my spine with another guy's weight on my back. I was doing that several times a week from the time I was 20-something years old. My discs were completely shot. And luckily, though, through stem cells, and we have this where they could use your fat cells and bone marrow. Now they're using the placenta too, but my discs were just good enough. They said, had my disc been any more worn out, the treatment wouldn't have worked. But I'm now probably about 80% better, and I'm going to get 1 more procedure done. I've had 2 done on my back and 5 done on my right shoulder, and I'm almost all the way better. But had I stayed, I would have been forced to retire because I would have kept doing that move. I wouldn't have known I didn't know what was hurting me. And I just thought I chalked it up to back pain from bumping and from working all the time. And all this stuff, like I've always said, it ended up being the most positive thing ever for me because it's going to allow me to have an opportunity to do something else wrestling again. And all these people, everyone's like, well, why haven't you gone to Impact Wrestling or why haven't you gone to New Japan? I've simply used the independence to, one, I make great money doing it. I've allowed myself to do it and take breaks and work smart and not do the things that have hurt me because I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on my business stuff that in having this income, it's simply been a way for me to still wrestle, do what I love to do, but do it at a pace where I'm not hurting myself. I can still keep healing and I'm almost all the way better. So a lot of people don't understand the truth of the situation and what led me to leave. And there's people I see, they're like, oh, you fucking left. He wasn't making enough money. And I've stated from the very beginning, no, that's not the case. They offered me a great amount of money. It was just that had nothing to do with it. And people taking the blog that I wrote about pay and goddamn, that's talking for the wrestlers and the guys that are there and not saying it was raising a question on equal pay and that if you are there, every talent is I don't want to say everybody is important to that company though, because it is fake and that the winners can't be the winners without the losers and that the losers shouldn't make so much less than the winners, that there should be a better pay scale. I'm not saying everybody makes the same amount of money, but and a lot of people understood it. A lot of wrestlers understood it. Outsiders, not so much and stuff. And, oh, he thinks everybody should get equal pay. And it's just like, it upsets me because there was so much negativity on something that wasn't meant to be negative. And it bothers me to this day.
Hey, that last day when you went there at TV, well, two questions. The first, you said you saw something that was just terribly written. What was it that completely turned you off? And then also, was that the last time you've ever spoke to anyone from WWE?
No. So again, I don't want to say what it was exactly, just for the guy that involved. I don't want to ever badmouth wrestlers. It wasn't somebody they don't book well, and it was just it was something that they had no intentions of doing anything with that guy. And they were going to start downgrading me pretty rapidly based off of what I saw that night. And I just had no intentions of going forward. Physically, the pain I was in, and I was just mentally just shot at that point due to that pain. I wasn't going to deal with the bullshit anymore. And based off of that, and I was like, I got to get out now where I have a certain level of value right now that had I stayed, it would have been a whole different situation. And no, I talked to them. They actually, they paid for my ankle. I had my ankle fixed in February. I had the rest of the metal taken out from that original botched surgery they left in. My insurance wouldn't cover it because it was a work injury. And it was a little bit of a hassle going back and forth for a few months. But they finally, all right, you're right, we'll take care of this. And they took care of it for me. So, and I've talked to Carano, text here and there with that. And it all dealt with the ankle stuff. It was not been like, hey, do you want to come back? I wouldn't go back right now until I know I'm healthy enough to be able to go back, which I'm very close. But and I talked to the guys there, obviously a handful of the guys and whatnot, but nothing as far as like returning or anything.
Have you ever thought about how similar your story is to CM Punk's story? Because he was beat up. He was upset with creative. He had a moment where it was just like, this is it. I got to get the hell out of here. And you pretty much have a very similar story. Is this something that you think is very common among the wrestlers who maybe aren't the guy like Cena, but the ones, knocking at that door?
I don't know. There's a lot of great there and there's a lot of bad, and everybody knows it that's there. So you got to be able to, like, for me, I'm in a very good position now of doing what I'm doing and where I'm happy. And if I can get my body to where I need it to be, I will then look at what my options are as far as pushing myself wrestling, as far as doing something on TV again and in pursuing that. But right now it's just like I'm living life and having fun. But our stories are there's definitely similarities between the two.
How do you feel about the people that along the years have compared you to Goldberg? Do you agree with that?
No, that's we're two entirely different wrestlers, and it doesn't do him justice. It doesn't do me justice. And I've been on the independents for 2 years, and not once has a crowd chanted Goldberg. That was typically a thing that internet fans would do at the shows, but it would typically be, it was initially early on, and then it was for a brief period in the heel part, and that was it. And it wasn't really, it was gone. Or if that initial run, whenever those Goldberg chants would start, I would just do the feed me more, and they would stop it instantly. I think they're making noise. As long as they're making noise, it's a good thing. And had they just been chanting Goldberg nonstop at me and feed me more wasn't over or any of that stuff, then you got an issue.
Right.
Then you're like, then they're not accepting you. But it was, and based off of the numbers, that's not the case. So I actually met him first time during WrestleCon. So it was, we're nothing alike outside of having bald head and the big traps. It's just like two entirely different wrestlers.
Was the name Goldberg ever brought up to you as a potential match down the road by Vince or anybody within WWE?
No, that was never. They never had any intentions of doing that when I was there. I'd actually brought that up once, and it was shot down right away. So,
where do you see yourself now that you've got all this other stuff going on? What do you see yourself doing in the next 5 years? Like, what positive vibrations are you putting out there to create good things for yourself right now?
Getting healthy is my main priority right now. I'm extremely lucky to be in the position that I'm in, to where I've been able to have all these stem cell treatments and get my body. We have this technology and these advancements in the medical field available to us, because had they not been, my career probably would have been completely done, and no doubt would have been done probably very shortly after I'd left. Getting healthy, growing my brand, the Feed Me More nutrition is extremely important to me. It's something I believe in strongly. I'm a wrestler, and I know that I'm a wrestler, though, and I fully intend to make a big return to wrestling when I can. Where that is, I don't know, but I will be able to when I know that I am healthy enough to do that at the level and be the Ryback that I want to be. Then I will worry about that. Then I'm looking at one more stem cell treatment probably in July, and that's it, and I'll be good to go. I'm pretty close to. This is the best I've felt in years where I'm at right now, and I'm not in pain anymore, and I feel great. But I have my investments, my real estate stuff, and I would like to just continue to grow everything while still being able to wrestle and enjoy, because I enjoy wrestling. I love wrestling. I had to leave. People then again, and I said the things that I said about the situation because that was the truth. But the injury was the main driving point behind me not being able to put up with anything anymore. And now that I'm not in pain anymore, and I'm not as angry anymore because I'm not in so much pain. Because when you're in pain like that, you're angry. You're constantly angry. And I try to always be positive and stuff, but it's like I can now look at things from a little different viewpoint, being where I'm at. But wrestling is going to hopefully be a big part of my life moving forward. But right now I'm having fun. I'm booked all the way through the end of the year on the independents. I do that and I just have fun, man. And I'm just enjoying sleeping in my own bed right now. And I've had to be very patient. I've had to learn. I was very obsessed before and very competitive. And I've learned in this period, I'm not competitive and I don't care what anyone else does anymore. I just worry about myself and competing with me. And I'm much happier that way. You will see me back somewhere wrestling, if not the end of this year, the beginning of next year.
And if you are enjoying what you're hearing from, of course, Ryback, you can check him out on his own podcast, Conversations with the Big Guy. I've enjoyed listening to it. I listened to it before and I listened to it researching for this show. You had a co-host switch recently. You were with Pat Buck, who I think you described as your best friend. And from what I read, you guys had a falling out and now you have a new host, right?
Yeah, no, I'm the only host of the show. We don't talk about Pat. That's a very unfortunate situation. And, he doesn't exist to me anymore, and he never will. So that's based off of things that I know of what we're going on, and he knows the truth of the situation. So it's unfortunate. It's a lesson learned. I was thankful for our friendship while I had it, but I now do the show with a guy, JD, who I'm really, really good buddies with, and an Asian Joe, my sidekick. And every once in a while we have Phoenix Marie, but she's a very busy girl working here in Vegas she works at a doctor's office, so she doesn't do the show quite as much anymore. But the numbers have been good, and we continue to grow. And it's I just have fun doing it, man. I just believe in doing things that you enjoy. and like doing the podcast is never about making money or anything like that. It's about letting people know the real me, hopefully give some health, nutrition tips, some diet tips, and some positivity, and tell some stories. And if somebody can get something out of it, great.
And where and when could they listen to it?
No, we're on iTunes and Stitcher, though, under Conversation with the Big Guy. And then on YouTube now under youtube.com/feedmemore channel. We now are filming it. I got a podcast studio I built, and we record it every week so people can see it actually on YouTube and the clips and the full podcast. So,
you know, I was talking to somebody about you recently, and it's someone very connected with the business. And his opinion was people don't like to talk about it, but your career is almost the perfect career because you got in, you got your name, you made your money, you created some good stuff for yourself. You may have paid off a house, and now you have a brand and the whole future ahead of you, and you don't have to work that schedule anymore. Is that how you see yourself, and you take pride in that?
Yes and no. I'm not happy about the way things ended, obviously. And I have a PO box where fans can send fan mail, and I've been off of TV over 2 years now, and I get the same amount of fan mail every week that I got when I first left from kids and adults. And that is one hard thing. And when I do these independent shows and talk to these families, and they don't necessarily understand, and they just want to see you back on TV, and then they get such enjoyment. And that's been hard. I never wanted to leave and upset people or disappoint people or sadden people. And I had to. I physically couldn't do it anymore, and it sucks. But I was doing a lot. I was working a heavy schedule like everybody else, but doing the power stuff. There's a reason why there's not a lot of power wrestlers. It's not easy, and it ate away at me, and it hurt me. And I've learned from those mistakes, obviously now, but very thankful for everything that happened there. As far as I've learned, because even the negative stuff from creative standpoints, there's been positives in that. And how that has motivated me and driven me in these outside things. I would like, obviously, for things to be better relationship-wise. And I obviously time, I feel, can heal all wounds and whatnot, but there's definitely got to be communication for that. And I don't want to wrestle anywhere else. If I wrestle again, I want to wrestle for WWE. Because anybody who's anybody in pro wrestling, that's where you go. I've competed there. I've competed at the highest level there. And I'll be honest, and being the independents as great as they are in the freedom, it fucking sucks compared to wrestling for WWE. And that's not a knock on it. It's just that's the nature of it's. If you can go wrestle in front of thousands of people or in front of 400 or 500 or a couple thousand, like you'd rather wrestle in front of thousands of people. And maybe I can come back in a little better position. Maybe I don't have to go back full time. If I maybe that's a discussion that can be had at some point in time. I don't know. I wouldn't say it was the perfect way. I feel like it was leaving on a negative as far as communication wise. And I like Vince. I like Hunter. They just, it's a shitty fucking business, man. And it's everybody that does it knows it. It's just, and I'm very honest and I'm very straightforward. And, people can have arguments and disagree. And that's life. That's being a man. Like a lot of people there are afraid to speak up or get fucking yelled at. God, it's just a pussy mindset. Like people, you disagree and you make mistakes or you say things and then, time, you look at things a little differently. And I think when I'm healthy, there could be a discussion at some point in time, and whether it's there or somewhere else, I don't know. But I wouldn't say it was the perfect way, but it was, I'm happy to have got out with what I have.
Ryback, if people want to reach out to you for bookings and then your Twitter and Instagram and everything, you want to list that stuff?
Yeah, Bill Behrens is now doing my bookings for me. Also, you can still email bookthebigguy@yahoo.com. My Twitter's at Ryback22. Instagram is thebigguy_Ryback22. Snapchat Ryback247. And then the feedmemore.com website and Feed Me More Nutrition available on Amazon, eBay, and feedmemore.com. And then Conversation with the Big Guy on iTunes and Stitcher and YouTube.
Yeah, make sure to check out that Conversations with the Big Guy, guys, because it's a great listen, and he goes into depth into a lot of stuff. And you went into depth with us here today, and thank you so much for joining us, man. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you guys for having me. It was an honor, and I appreciate your time.
Thanks, man.
Robbie, dude, all that crazy stuff that Ryback was saying, we got every single answer we've ever wanted. What did you think about our friend Ryback?
You know, he's like a big teddy bear. You think he's this big angry guy, but he really is a nice guy. I mean, I bet everyone that just listened to that interview is kind of like they were not expecting him to be as nice and intelligent as he is, right? I mean, do you agree with that?
I totally agree. No matter how much I tried to be snarky, crappy wrestling fan, he was just so positive, and we got a few things out of him, but he really takes that secret law of attraction to the next level, and I really enjoyed him a lot.
Yeah, no, me too. And I think he's still got a bright future ahead of him in pro wrestling. And when he heals up, like he says, he's going to be healing up. You know, when his back gets all better and everything, I think we're going to see him on TV again.
I definitely agree. Vince has a way of, mending fences with just about everybody. But speaking of somebody who may not ever mend a fence, coming up next week, we have a very unusually candid, not just arguing, but a very candid, open, honest interview with Vince Russo. Vince is a longtime friend of yours, right?
Yeah, and remember, guys, Russo's done a lot of interviews. You might have heard him say a lot of things already, but next week, don't miss our interview with him because you are going to hear things you've never heard before out of his mouth.
And it's kind of an interesting thing on our show, and we're going to see if it works, in that Robbie is a wrestler and I'm a fan, and coming at it from both ends, I think we're going to get a little bit more out of Vince Russo. But what I'd like to ask all the fans to do is, and all the listeners to do, is not be so divisive and just approach it with an open mind. If you're one of these guys that rah, everybody always picks on Vince, I'm going to curse people out on Twitter, or I hate Vince Russo, drop all that, turn off your decision-making machines, and listen to what the man's got to say, because I might have been one of those guys, and I'm going to ask him the questions, and we're going to get some answers, and hopefully people can find a better understanding of it.
Yeah, and I think they're going to be pleasantly surprised and realize that Russo's not that bad of a guy after all.
If we get people to realize that Russo's not that bad of a guy after all, we really do change lives, Robbie.
Hey, I'm telling you it's going to happen because I know him very well, and I think he's a good dude, and everyone's going to also.
Hey, so speaking of good dudes, our good friend Robbie E., known now as the Robert Strauss brand, is on tour somewhere near you. So, Robbie, where are you at this weekend?
So this Saturday I'm going to be in Tampa, Florida for FTPW Wrestling. I'm there, MVP is there. They got a bunch of other good guys on the show. So if you're in the Tampa or Florida area, anywhere, come check out the show. And then, guys, you got to remember, first I wanted to say, we really do appreciate how active you guys are with us on social media. Between Twitter and Instagram, you guys are regularly commenting and let us know how you feel, which is awesome. We appreciate that. And we appreciate all the sign-ups for Patreon. Follow us on Twitter at WyattEnded and on Instagram at WyattEnded.
And definitely follow Robbie at Robbie E Impact on Twitter, and I'm Matt Koon at Matt Koon Music. Next week, you will not want to miss this show. Listen to it before it makes the news. Vince Russo next week on Why It Ended.